Is going 1 week from talking about character deaths in one show to the next week where I have to talk about character deaths in the next show. Yeah, Ultraman Geed pulled the Ultra Dies Gambit, with Ultraman Zero this week, having him take a shot from the Monster of the Week, whose name I am forgetting, and I didn't pull up the wiki because I didn't think I needed it. All masterminded by, of course, our villain for the series, Kei Fukuide, and this episode was actually mostly about him and his villainous connection to Belial, or at least his presumed connection to Belial, because they didn't establish it more than from the mystery standpoint. Turns out Kei's books, at least the popular ones, are all based on the events of Ultra Galaxy Mega Monster Battle, the 2000s movie series, which were the vehicle of Ultraman Zero, where Ultraman Belial was first introduced. Except all of his books are taken from the perspective of Belial, and making Belial the hero, and making Zero himself the villain of all of them. Which is only realized after Kei visits Riku's boss's shopping mart, where everybody is passing through because of... you need supplies in the current crisis situation for the city where, people have been left homeless due to the devastation and all that. And Reito was passing through with his family at that incident when Kei came by and offered, and since everybody in the group is apparently huge fans of his books, except for Riku and Reita, because they don't read them, he offers to bring them to a special seminar he's holding on the introduction to the next book. So when Reita picks up a copy for, actually, no, not so much Reita picks up a copy, because Reita's wife, Lumina, is a huge fan of the books, and so he's holding a copy, and then Zero peeks out from his sleep in Reita to actually take a look at it, and the cover, and actually the entire book, is revealed to be about Reita, as I said, Zero's adventures, but from the perspective and hero-villain swap with Belial. And it's like, how could a normal human in a universe where those events did not take place possibly know about those? Especially with the whole crisis impact for the series, where the universe has been reset and fused with the King of Ultra. So immediately this puts Zero on guard with the simple logic of, he should not know about those things. We need to figure out how he knows about those things, because if he's in contract with Belial, that only means all sorts of bad things. And of course, Riku is distrustful of it because Zero does not put any of that in those terms. He thinks it's just a cosmic coincidence, like people seeing Geed and, by proxy, Belial in the remnants of the Crisis Impact incident, like the pictures they have of that. So it seems like Riku's a bit too trusting in this situation, but it definitely seems like Zero did not explain himself well enough that the only way someone could know about all of these things is if they were colluding with Belial, which would of course explain all of the random monster attacks and the monsters trying to go after the Ultra Capsules with the Ultraman powers in them. Though the greater plan here is, of course, to get Zero off of the table for either just pretty much force more Ultra Capsules to arise and just continue testing Geed without any other form of interruption, as Zero has done previously. I should phrase it like that, because it's not just last week that he did so. So he calls Light Up during the seminar to the presenter's podium and pretty much presents a outwardly villainous context to what he's doing, but the phrasing of his words is very clever in that it's all taken from the perspective of play acting out aspects of how he wants to take his next book, which of course, his next book is not based on any previous adventure. It's based on the current events in the series, and in the part, that is probably the motivation that got him into working with Belial. He's a creator who wants to create real things, and what better way to create a real thing than to make them happen in reality and then write about them? That is actually pretty damn sociopathic when you think about it, and while not the best villain motivations, I'm admittedly just reading into where they're likely taking this at this point, since show's only 7 episodes in, 8 if you've got access to Crunchyroll or just want to watch it raw on Super Raya's YouTube page, which I did for the next episode. I know what's coming here. I watched it raw on YouTube, that is. So yeah, I'm actually pretty intrigued by Kay as a villain, as he's definitely treating this all smartly, in the sense that even when he loses, it's all part of the grander scheme that he's playing out. So I'm going, as with the intelligent types, there is always a point where their losses stop being part of a larger plan and start being someone surpassing or subverting their plan, and I'm wondering where we're going to reach that point. I didn't think Raita's upgrade next week for the new Ultraman Zero Beyond is quite in line with his plans, even though he didn't seem too upset. I'll get into that more later. So I'm curious what the eventual end goal of it is. To just completely finish the book? Is it the revival of Belial? Is he actually one of those trying to prophesize the end of all times in the reset with killing the King of Ultra and thus the universe he is fused with? I've got a lot of questions about that going forward, and what is his ultimate reason for doing this? Yeah. He summons a monster in front of everybody at the event, but of course all of his activation conditions, he's just saying them they're show props, part of the play acting, even though he proceeds to summon a monster right in front of them all. Said monster is a giant robotic dragon thing that I just freaking love the design. It looks very similar to Kiryu, the Mechagodzilla from the Millennium Era Mechagodzilla movies, and I really like that design. I think it's the best looking of all the Mechagodzilla looks, and it's very Subaraya, for lack of a better term, with regards to their later era machine-type monster designs. That, like, I hate that I'm forgetting the name, because this thing looks freaking awesome. And I know it's probably an older era suit, like a lot of the monsters end up being lately in the Ultra series, simply for recycling purposes, but it's really damn good and really damn effective, because it's... Okay, admittedly, there is a bit of a weakness with this fight, as G just goes primitive on it, when his Acro Smasher or Burning Solid forms would probably be better, or more adept to fighting something with that kind of power instead of just using his primitive form. It's like, Riku's an inexperienced hero, but I would think after seeing something that bulky and mechanical, he would have gone for something with a bit more force behind it than his base form. Required for the staging of the plot simply to get Zero out of the action when the laser gets fired at him, sacrificing himself to save Reito and his Zero-Eye transformation device turning to stone. I've seen this enough with the Ultra series. I know where this is going, where he's going to get some type of power infusion which unstones him, but it is pretty damn effective in the way they pull this out, as from the beginning with their encounter with Kay inside, Kay is openly threatening him, so it's like Zero can see no options but to play into it, and with another Ultra out there, it's not like he's leaving the planet defenseless, so might as well play it out, because he's too weak to actually be able to counter anything and do anything but play into the mastermind's schemes. He's like, you really don't see a good way out of this without the That's subterfuge. Secondary objectives K has planned out being established, especially with how he was threatening Reitz's family, which is definitely a no-go for all of that. So yeah, decent episode for setting up the new form for the secondary Ultra for the series. X-Eyed. This was not a great finale for the series. I mean, X-Eyed has had its flaws, but it's overall been a good series. This seemed a bit contrived, as, well, the battle with Chronos has reached the point where no one has a good way of stopping Pause. All of the other bugsters, aside from, of course, the revived human bugsters, Kiria and Kuroto are around, so they can't exactly do anything to muck up with Pause. And everybody else loses their higher level Ga shots, leaving them with just the level 2 base forms for everybody. So, of course, Chronos abuses Pause like hell and goes after Emu tries to fight him off in human form, civilian form, I should say. And he's immune to Pause? How? I mean, there's a flash of his bugster infection, because Parad's not dead, despite Parad's heroic sacrifice last week. So that fills that plot hole. But Barado takes a while to remanifest, so he's not there yet. But Emu just managed to punch Kronos' Buggle Driver's sway and crack it, and I think that is what causes the rest of the following heroic curb stomp. A heroic curb stomp, by the way, that perfectly matches one of the opening scenes of the show, and I really like it when they do those kind of callbacks. They did it a bit in Drive with how its opening sequence with these spikes bursting out of the ground that Trideron had to avoid ended up being called back in the final episodes with the final boss of the series having the power to manipulate reality like that. So yeah, these kind of callbacks to how the show opened is... X9's been good with those. I mean, you see that from the opening sequences with how they all evolved and kind of gave away tells about the show with other glitches and things that you only notice on comparison or when they changed the graphic. So, yeah, that was effective. Less so Chronos getting curb stomped by the 5 main riders in their level 2 forms. Seriously, they're back to absolute basics. Admittedly, it matches last week when they all used level 1 to defeat Game Day's Bugster form and separate it from Chronos himself. But that doesn't quite work because not even 5 minutes before, all of the riders in their final forms were getting, of course, except for Exide Muteki, were getting their asses handed to them by Chronos. So there's a massive difference in power between their base level forms and their final level forms, be it level 50, level 100, grade X 0, level, and even the level 0. There's just a massive difference in power compared to Chronos, and now he's getting his ass kicked. They say it's because Parad infected Chronos, because Masamune is technically a bugster at this point, with the Game Deus vaccine and his own powers to just bug him up, but that's contradicted by what was done before, unless it was caused, like it was seeded into him by Parad's actions, and then Emu re-triggering his bugster infection actually set it off. But it's not exactly relating as that. It would have been more effective had Chronos been bugging out after Emu cracked his Buggle Driver Zwei, because that thing is taking in a ridiculous amount of damage over the series by people punching it, bashing it, stabbing it, it getting knocked around. It would make sense from all that damage for his driver to be glitching out and causing issues with Chronos' powers after it's finally reached past the breaking point with Emu's final punch that disabled Pause and really just didn't disable the entire effect, so it was still night, which freed everyone else. that would make more sense to me than from what is being showcased than what is being written about it. Admittedly, I am probably reading too much into this, but that's kind of my deal as a reviewer. I read too much into things that are problematic or issues I have with it to either show why it's awful or how, with just a simple minor difference in plotting, what they're showcasing and what they're trying to say happens would actually work. Because otherwise, the final battle with all the level 2s against Chronos, with the whole back to basics versus the ultimate end game boss thing, actually for the most part works from a combat perspective. The only part I would think falters is that the farther the battle goes on, the more it's just X8 versus Chronos, where I'm asking, where is everyone else? Chronos didn't knock them out, they just kind of disappeared for this final Rider versus Rider clash, where they seem to have been entirely moot. So, it's X8's show, but for a while now they've been focusing the teamwork, and it did start off as all of them outfighting Chronos because they couldn't, Chronos couldn't get a beat on one of them without another one interrupting, but that was how they were fighting him before, so what's the big difference? It's problematic, is what I'm getting at. But after X8's final rider kick of the series, except for the true ending movie, which has been confirmed to happen 1 year after all of the series events, and the 3 coming alternative ending V-Cinema special events. For the record, I will be getting those because I've liked X8, and the V-Cinemas are coming with a special Maximum Mighty God X. It's Ganim's version of the Maximum Mighty X Gashot, and I never got that one for the series because it was from the toy line, because I've been short on cash and whatnot. It's like, I'll do it for the V-Cinema, pretty much. The V-Cinema collection, actually, because they're going to be releasing them individually and then as a 3-movie set along with the Gashot. That's neither here nor there. I'm looking forward to those. Those will probably be fun because the series, even with its flaws, has never had. I like this show. It has its flaws, but it's overall a good one. It's just not high tier on the. It doesn't do all of its story stuff effectively, to get a bit into the wrap-up of it, and admittedly, spending the last over 20 episodes solely focused on Chronos with no other major diversions in it, and, we can only watch the same character getting his ass kicked so many times before it gets stale. We had this problem, we had this problem with Odin Ryuki, which Chronos is obviously trying to mimic. Knight killed Odin, 3 times, even though he was supposed to be the end boss of the series, so should have only popped up intermittently to dominate everyone until the first end of it, instead of having to see him revived again and again. It's like, hell, that was one of the things that they did better in Dragonite. They kept Odin until the last possible moment, so they didn't overuse him. Anyways, after the battle ends, Masamune is pissed and pretty much says spitefully, "You're not gonna win, you're special characters, I'm the game god!" And I'm, of course, paraphrasing all of that, but he's pretty much just lambasting that the writers that are actually the cause of why no one will ever be revived, because he's going to stab his own Gashot into himself to smash it. We've already established in the series that breaking the Kamen Rider Chronicle Gashot that Masamune uses will end Kamen Rider Chronicle permanently and allow them to just get everyone out, because its master control codes would be removed, so they could pull people out like they did Kuroto and Kiria. So, what Masamune did in stabbing it into himself, since he's a bugster, completely just bug out the game from ever being controlled again like that? Did he retain the lockout so only the Master Chronicle Gashot could get people out? Because it's established in the epilogue that destroying the Gashot allows the other minor bugsters to remanifest now, so it can't be like the total lockout we saw previously that the Master Gashot allowed, so its control code should be off, so they should be able to get people out with no problem instead of what this end of the series says, in that Emu and everyone else is now going to be focused on trying to figure out how to get people out of the data form storage they are in the Proto-Gashots, which is told to everybody as part of a larger press conference about the end of Kamen Rider Chronicle, and Emu even showing off those and saying that it's just in a more advanced form of the syndrome where people appear to be dead, people appearing to be dead came syndrome, and it's like, that's not really a disease. Like, the Lost One syndrome, the Lost One cases in Dot Hack were people being rendered comatose while their consciousness was digitized and trapped in a game-over player character. So the only way to get people to recover was to pretty much reset the system, so those characters then logged out, the consciousness then snapped back to their bodies. This is the case of where their entire bodies have been turned to data. It's not really a virus, it's because it's past the terminal stage of the syndrome where they are converted to data. The terminal state being that their normal lives end when that happens. So to revive it, you simply need to take them out of data storage and remanifest them. I can understand them not knowing quite how to do that without making them a bugster like Kiria and Kuroto, and that being why they're taking things slow to not just make the people they revive a mass of potentially virulent bugsters, but in the way it's phrased, it's not, at this stage, it's not really a medical disease, but you need to use more tech lingo to explain it, like someone being scanned wouldn't be a... You pretty much just dump them from reality into a storage file, like the digitizer in Mega Ranger and Power Rangers in Space. You guys have seen Power Rangers in Space? Remember the whole Mission to Secret City two-parter where people were getting turned into data cards? Yeah, that's pretty much where we are at like this, and it really doesn't seem appropriate to describe it in medical terms for a tech jargon way of saying save data. Sorry, my camera died and I really wanted to finish that last sentence. So, epilogue stuff. It turns out that Nico is still in high school, which makes when Parad defeating her 6 years ago when she was 12, it's like the timeline for her seems off, and it then makes her whole romance subplot with Taiga kinda squicky, to phrase it like that. It's like, she'd be 17, 18 at this point, and yeah, no, you kind of... It's like, it made more sense for her to be in her 20s and having spent the interim time being a super pro gamer instead of just being a really successful genius gamer high school student. It really should have been her... He had revealed she'd been in her 20s or whatnot. But it kind of does tie into this, as apparently the ultimate conclusion to her arc is alluding that she's deciding to become a doctor, as she then goes to Taiga's place. Taiga has been recertified as a doctor specializing in game syndrome incidents, thanks to Kagami's actions in kind of like wanting to repent for something that was out of, for inciting so much anger at something out of Taiga's control. And pretty much Nico wanting to be hired on as you know, his, I wouldn't say secretary, but she asked to help out his clinic as an office worker, since she's not exactly certified to do anything medical, and presumably she was given back her Kamen Rider Chronicle Gashot so she could potentially transform into Ride Player Nico as his assistant in following game syndrome incidents. I'm, of course, reading a lot into that, but with what they were alluding to, it kind of makes sense. That, and also Nico threw her entire winnings into stock into Genom Corporation as their new majority shareholder. She had that much in winnings, apparently. Which is now being run by the guy who created the Bergamon Bugster. So, that should be... Admittedly, you kind of saw that a mile out with him being the one nice guy of Genom Corporation. But it was still nice to see, especially since he's fully collaborating through proxy of Kyria, on their Bugster full-on vaccine research. Presumably through stuff like the Mighty Dr. XX for the vaccine they made for Chronos' infection, which they would then do to vaccinate all the other more malignant bugsters or any new ones that might manifest through the new gaming technology Genom has provided for the world to pretty much just eliminate all of that. I presume these vaccines would also be used to release anyone trapped in the related bugster's protogash shots back into reality as a full human instead of a data mass bugster form like Kyria and Kuroto. Kagame's shown training new surgical interns, with them getting the mistaken idea that they should buy cream puffs to practice visualizing their cutting technique, which is kind of silly, considering that wasn't really the reason why Kagami has his fondness for sweets, even though it is part of how he applies his medical skill. I have always gotten the idea with Kagami that his skill is so great because he practices it with everything he does involving any type of knife or sharp implement, especially since that is reflected in his power set with Brave and how he uses the Gashikun's sword. It's like, it's funny, but they're definitely reading the wrong thing from it, and like asserting that wrong thing is an aspect of the reality of the character, even though that's not really a thing. And of course, this wraps back with Emu going back to more regular work, I presume certified as a full-on doctor instead of an intern, so they kind of lost the intern thread a while ago, so who knows what his status even is. But it goes back, and he goes back to the CR, and Kuroto is playing with guess who but Asuna. Asuna lives! Celebration! The curse of Yuriko Meisaki is avoided once again! Yeah, like I said last week, the curse of Yuriko Saki is wastes of life, worthless deaths for female Kamen Riders. Those that don't stay dead don't really apply, and Asuna's heroic sacrifice last week kind of invalidated to begin with, but this is complete and total subversion like we had last with Nadeshiko, where you think she dies, but because she is an entity that doesn't have a real death state, a true death state as you would expect it, her revival is almost pretty much assured. And the same can be said of Parad, who Emu managed to catch the spark of for his infection to, at the last moment, as Parad was decomposing, to just allow it to refester in Emu, and Parad remanifests at the same time, so all 7 of the main riders live this time. It's like, we've not had that large a cast with all the members surviving the final conflict since... Yeah, I can't remember a time, but it's an interesting ending. Not the strongest of ones, but at least it's satisfying. It's like, you've wrapped up all the major things, you got the post-series V cinemas, oh, and of course the team up with Build coming to end the Heisei era of riders, since that is ending this year with Emperor Hirohito? No, Akihito was the... Akihito, yes. Stepping down at the end of the year for his son. So, yeah, Emperor Heisei is going away. Heisei era is ending. Last chance for the Heisei era riders to have a big team-up, since Build is going to be the last Heisei rider since it's premiering in the Heisei era. So, X-Side overall as a series. first 12 episodes are too rushed and very poorly handled, evened out after that. Then we get to the Chronos arc, where it's just continuously Chronos and the machinations to get against Chronos. I think that went on too long, or at least there should have been more interim time with Chronos not as the main antagonist in that, to more clear up loose ends like we had with Graphite. A bit more of a conflict with Graphite in the midst of things, I think, would have helped. Nico not becoming the second Chronos is a stumbling point for some people. I can understand that. I also don't like that Chronos completely subverted any chance for Game Deus to be the final end boss, like most people thought he would, especially considering the nature of Masamune's own Bugster immunity, and the Chronos and Game Deus supposedly supposed to be at the ultimate odds. It makes sense in those contexts to fuse them for the true final boss, but then that didn't happen, and Game Deus just seemed to be consumed by the power of Chronos at the end of the day, making him an afterthought. I really think it would have been smarter after the initial showcasing of Game Deus in the early 30s and their attempt to get Chronos infected, were to Chronos implant himself and just subsume Masamune as the final arc antagonist instead of it being the afterthought it was. Amongst other Exide's other problems is, aside from the chief writer of the arc, Genom, then Genom, Dangerous Zombie, then Parad, Paradox, Gamer, Level, whatever, and then finally Chronos, the actual bugsters, for the most part, for the week-to-week Monster of the Week villainy was pretty poorly handled. It's like, you did decently with the drama, you did decently with the characterization, except when it came to the focused antagonists of the interim plots, where it was always subsumed by whatever Genom was doing, or Parad's obsession with Emu, or even, again, with the final arc, Chronos' obsession with distributing Kamen Rider Chronicles so he could ultimately control everyone and everything through the infections and their curings. So, like, Salty and the other lower-level bugsters, just the main 10 of them, they were not really handled well at all. And it's, admittedly, Monsters of the Week, a lot of them don't get character, and their reappearances partway through did help with that, but they were used so sparingly, and, like, when we got to the actual Kamen Rider Chronicle arc, they mostly seemed to disappear, so Nico's questing to get all of the Gacha trophies to summon Chronos, most of that was handled off-screen, and that really shouldn't have been how those were handled, because you made the suits, and you barely used most of them. That's really not how that should have gone. Otherwise, you had some good stuff with, like, the Kyria death, minus the advertisement for it, which made it seem like it was a publicity stunt. You had very strong acting for most of the cast, especially, Kuroto's actor, whose name escapes me at the moment, who was just, even when he was, it's just, you can't hate the guy. It's the same thing as what happened with Kohei Murakami when he played Masato Kusaka. He is so good at playing a villainous or malicious character, you can't help but see the appeal of the guy through how well his performance carried over. Tetsuya Iwanaga. Why do I suddenly remember his name? You got some good stuff with the pathos for Emu and his guilt over being the patient zero of everyone else's bugster infection. You got a few good twists. Some of them didn't exactly make sense. Admittedly, a lot of exposition was kind of thrown in your face to explain or justify something, but once it was in the canon of the show, when it was then called back to by someone else doing it or a similar circumstance, thus playing off that establishment. Okay, rephrase. The establishment of aspects of its story was poor, but the utilization of those elements after they were established was very good. So, X-Side is pretty much a give-and-take series at the end of the day. The good things are used well, the bad things they needed more time, ultimately, for establishing them, aside from the hand-wave lines they were given, and ultimately, I think I can count that down to the fact that this is, at the end of the day, a 45-episode series where there was just only so much time they were given to get all of that in, so they couldn't more stretch out the plots. This is very noticeable in the first 12 episodes. They even it out after, but it feels like had they had another 5 episodes, maybe even 4 episodes, most of that moving towards the early side of the series, then that might have evened out things enough for the rest to be established enough to improve it enough to make it a more highly rated show. I very much enjoyed it for all of the gaming tales. Aldo the Fox from the Tokupedia side, they and the admins and mods have been keeping very good track of all the gaming meta references that are seeded throughout the series. I love that I've been able to get most of the RPG-related items, because RPGs are my thing. Since I actually have camo pattern pants and the black shirt and the doctor's coat for my other stuff, I will probably be cosplaying as Taiga for conventions, because at the end of the day, I ended up really liking his character. And I do not do ties, so I can't exactly cosplay as Kagami to be the full-on RPG gamer, but simply because I feel Taiga fits me more from a character and expressive point. Admittedly, I'd have to cut my hair or get a wig for his specific salt and pepper hairstyle, but give and take with this stuff that's cosplay worthy. I'm glad the series finally got us 2 female writers to battle out, and the fact that Commodore Poppy can kick the ass of most writers because of her power tier is pretty damn awesome. So, yeah, I'd ultimately say this is a watch series if you've not been following along with it previously, and honestly, the things that are wrong with it are just enough outweighed the things that are wrong with it are just enough outweighed by the meritable things about it it's not really a bad show at all. I'm tempted, due to my moving situation, I'm tempted to take a few weeks off from doing the vlogs for Build, despite me still watching it, but we'll see how that pans out and whether I need to do any other things. I'll at least try to do a first episode thoughts vlog for stuff next week, especially since that'll also be talking about the premiere of Ultraman Zero Beyond, but things will definitely be a bit more tentative the closer I get to actually moving. It's the time of the month the time of the year where I actually need to start apartment hunting, and that'll be taking up a lot of my time soon. So, thanks for those who continue to watch these videos, even though they're not really more analysis-y, and despite me being more of a recappy person. Just thanks for watching and supporting the show, guys. See you all later.